I live just on the edge of the small town that my family and I have called home my whole life. The town's welcome sign is just a stone's throw away from my front porch. Yet, we are not far away from civilization as you may think, as we have neighbors close by on either side, and the center of town is only a short walk away. The perfect center of mundane, with no real room for something odd or outlandish to lurk beyond the gaze of the public. So, when I went on my second walk of the summer, after finishing a semester of college, you can likely guess what passed through my head when I saw a bike lying innocuously outside the entrance to the old abandoned house. Someone most probably tossed it because they had outgrown it, or some kid is playing nearby. Now, generally, I would agree and not have paid much credence to the all too mundane sight. However, I remember hearing my neighbor make a call to the police about some teens trying to swipe a few things from inside the house. Given the size of the bike, I also figured the kid was quite young, only about 9 to 12, so I figured it was better that I scare him off instead of making a big scene of something I didn't view as a big deal. At the very least, it offered an avenue to something more exciting than the monotony I had become accustomed to. I stepped past the gnarled hedges that had long grown wild and feral from disregard and into the front lawn of the house. From there is what used to be a driveway, but was now a patchwork of loose gravel, grass, and moss. The other side led to a small fountain next to the house, though I had only trekked over to it once with my brother over the winter as the wild grass grew higher than our knees and neither us wanted to be preyed upon by a stray tick. I stood there in the middle listening and looking for any sign of life, but there was nothing. Since I had come all this way, I might as well follow the gravel driveway and head towards the garage. I had always figured it was the easiest way to slip and the point of entry was that the estate sale was held after Dr. Lowe, the previous owner, had passed away. On the side of the house sat two old sliding wood garage doors, and to a weird mix of sorrow and glee, I could see a broken-off chunk of the panel, damaged by years of wear and tear, moved to allow someone to potentially gain access. I felt torn. By law, I knew I couldn't enter the building as, currently, the property was owned by Dr. Lowe's wife, much to the chagrin of me and many of our neighbors. The house became a whitewashed tomb, its weathered Victorian walls masking the true rot and decay the house had long suffered. Even if it was in the vein of getting out another trespasser, it would still be trespassing. The house's rotten interior was also a factor. If was hurt in there due to going through a floorboard or something falling on him, there wasn't much time for me to be screwing about out here. After a brief second mulling it over, I decided to take a look inside from the windows and call out to see if someone would come out. If I didn't hear or see anything in there, I'd chalk it up to the bike being abandoned and my little investigation me chasing a non-existent goose. The garage doors were at eye level with me, but were cloudy with dust and grime. However, I could still make out vague shapes of strewn about old furniture and other objects laid haphazardly about. I called a few times, banging on the garage door to see if that provoked a reaction, but nothing stirred. Wanting to at least be thorough and not leave any nagging questions, I figured I might as well kneel and peek through the hole, just to make sure that wasn't any low near the door I couldn't see from the window. I wish I hadn't, as by the time I had just gotten down on my hands, I could already glimpse dark red stains that splattered the concrete. A violent rush shot through my body as, by reflex, I sprang back, nearly collapsing onto my side. This, however, only showed me more of the real carnage that had been wrought. The kid was dead. His face was pale, with green eyes that held nothing but a hollow sorrow. His face was stained with streaks from tears that etched down his jaw and to his neck. The nape of his neck was marred red with dark chunks torn out, a pool of dried blood forming a small basin around where it must have poured from the vicious wound. His body was laden with dirt and gashes. I could barely muster words, only discordant sounds that made my throat roar. Whatever killed him, I know it wasn't swift, but a fleeting struggle against... what? The shock and fear that had enthralled and muted my alterness released as my situation dawned on me. Where is the thing that did this? My mind raced as I poured through my recollection of local fauna. A black bear seemed the most likely culprit, as the only species of great enough bulk and size to do this kind of damage alone, but there was still the pressing matter of where it was. Had it gone? Was it still lurking? My breath quickened as my pulse raced, as my senses heightened to grasp my field, yet before I could pick myself off the ground I had been tethered to, processing the shock. A sudden, deafening bang erupted from the garage beside me. I sprang back in shock, finally getting my feet back beneath me as my eyes fixated on where the sound had originated. I could see the large, dark eyes of a dog-like creature staring blankly at me. Its face was bony with a long snout, and it had its front legs, of which I could make out were slim but ended in large paws that were roughly the size of my hand. Time crawled to a halt in the small eternity the two spent in our visual gridlock. Its expressionless, void-like eyes transfixed with sinister curiosity of how its new target would try to flee, paralyzed my legs as I stayed in the low crouch, jumped to earlier. I felt like a rabbit peering down the muzzle of a fox, praying by some miracle it survives. Snap, the old wood giving slightly under the steady weight of the dog-like creature, resounding like a shot from a starter's gun, dispelling the chilling tension as a hot wave of adrenaline coursed through my veins, propelling me out of the insulted wilderness of Dr. Lou's house and back to civilization, as I could hear the desperate scramblings of the beast. Desperately clawed to break out from its dwelling and rend my flesh with its teeth. Fortunately, I was all too familiar with this side of the Lou property as I shot through one of the gaps in the gnarled hedges, breaking free into the driveway of house that lives on the opposite side of the Lou property, and made my way to the sidewalk, quickly checking for traffic on the interstate that cut through the heart of town before crossing over. Once across, I finally looked back to see if it had taken the risk to follow me out of its sheltered haven. But it didn't. Instead, I could see it, this time in full view, watching from the entrance into the yard. Its face and eyes were still hollow and expressionless, yet it exuded a deep, unsated desire to hunt. I quickly called the police while I watched its movements, moving back towards my house while still on the other side of the street. It watched me for a while before eventually disappearing once again behind the hedges. I told them of the grisly death of the child and that the large, unknown animal that did it was still active and dangerous there. They arrived after a good 10 minutes, sirens and blue lights blaring as they inspected the area and recovered the boy's remains. I asked them if they had found and killed whatever it was, but no dice there. Told me they searched as much of the building as they could, but couldn't find the creature. They did, however, find traces of fur and what looked like the making of a den in the basement of the house, and planned to set up some cameras to watch for when or if it comes back. Down the road, I could see the kids' family, who were all deep in shock and grief, seeing the state in which their precious son was. Lifeless, cold, with all semblance of vitality drained from him. I thought about how, if I were more proactive in my wanderlust at his age, would I too have a similar fate? I don't think so, but then again, I never imagined a monster could be lurking so close to civility.